part 1, we learned how the asset bubble in Japan's stock and real estate began in the 1980s. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, you might find this episode confusing, although that doesn't stop most Americans from voting on most issues. Now let's discuss the decline. What did politicians do to stop the rapidly declining Tokyo stocks? The Japanese central bank dramatically lowered interest rates to alleviate the pressure on Japanese banks. The lower interest rates didn't help the problem, so the Japanese central bank lowered them even more, and eventually they went negative. In fact, Japan prints so much money, maybe that's why origami's popular. I got so much paper, might as well fold the crane. Negative interest rates? What? How does that work? Under a system of negative rates, the central bank charges commercial banks for unused reserves, the idle cash just sitting there. They do this hoping to force them to lend it out, thus stimulate the economy. It turns cash into a game of hot potato. In fact, you could use it for protection. Give me that gold watch. I'm robbing you. Stand back. I've got Japanese yen. Well, I don't want to pay negative rates, man. Just keep it. The Japanese central bank is the most aggressive in the world. Maybe that's why Asians are so good at math. To buy a pack of gum, you gotta count thousands of yen. You're just being racist. No, it's positive racism. I don't even know if Asians vote left. Probably not, because they'd see through it. Progressive politicians are bad at math. I still don't understand the concept of a negative rate. Because commercial banks are looking to get rid of the money, they're willing to pay you to take it as long as what they pay you is less than what the central bank would charge them to have the cash sit idle. Dude, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hot is that chick? -2. You'd have to pay me to date her. Well, that's not a bad deal. Her dad was going to charge me 3% if I can't pawn her off. Oh, Japan's government loves this because with negative interest rates on the bonds, they get paid to borrow. And Japan's government is the most indebted in the entire world. Which is not what you would think when you think about their culture. A samurai must learn self-control. But borrow now while it's cheap. I want everything, please. I think that the government should stimulate the economy not by lowering rates more, but by fiscal spending. The problem is they're stuck in a trap of debt deflation. I completely disagree. This entire problem was created by your artificial intervention to begin with through the Plaza Accord. Next, you'll need a new intervention to deal with the intervention you're now doing. We have successfully stopped the falling real estate prices, but now nobody can afford them. We need a new program to stop the rampant homelessness. This whole thing is just ridiculous because the original justification for the Plaza Accord was that American companies couldn't compete with Japanese exporters. Now you're saying Japanese exporters need their government to help them to compete with the Americans. You're creating a cycle of government dependence. Left-wingers want to turn the stock market into the Paralympics, where government stimulus is the prosthetic. I've got a weak dollar. I've got a weak yen. Way to make fun of disabled people. A liberal would never make fun of a disabled person. Because if we're talking about a Republican, it'd be redundant. And the reason that the previous fiscal stimulus didn't work in Japan is because their politics is so corrupt that the money was misused and misallocated. They desperately need reform. What is the Diet? Our version of Congress is called the Diet. It's ironic that the biggest spenders in history are spelled with the name Diet. In America, people vote for the president and Congress. Japan, though, has a parliamentary system where people vote for the Diet and then the members of the Diet vote for their prime minister. Well, what's wrong with that? Because the prime minister can still maintain control long after he's been kicked out of office through his previous relationship with members of the Diet. In this sense, it's kind of like when you break up with your girlfriend on Facebook, but you still have sex with her every night. Yeah, on paper, you're out of office, but we all know who's really on top. Can you give us an example of the corruption? Kakue Tanaka took bribes from our good old friends at Lockheed Martin. He was ejected from office for those crimes. But for years, he still controlled the country through his previous relationships with the Diet members that had elected him. Edit that out. Yeah, sure. We'll tell him it's against the community guidelines. I have the new Censor That app from the New World Order. But for years, he donated to charity and hugged kittens. We missed an important point. Because Japan's interest rates are negative, you can get paid to borrow money. So American banks game the system by borrowing Japanese yen, getting paid to do that, then investing in US dollars and lending those out, getting paid to lend. So they're getting paid on both sides. This only works, though, as long as the US market is doing well. As the US stock market crashes and everybody tries to repatriate the money, the Japanese yen rapidly rises. This follows a similar pattern to gold, where it's a safe haven from the dollar in times of market stress. In fact, did you know that since 2014, the Japanese yen is more correlated with the price of gold than any other currency? While the euro and Chinese yuan also benefit from a weak dollar, they're risk-on currencies, meaning they tend to rise when stock markets also rise. The yen and gold are risk-off weak dollar. So here's the greatest irony in the world. The Japanese have printed so much money that their currency is as good as gold.
Do not buy yen. I have my finger over the print money button.
That sounds pretty good. I'll give up my gold for that. I think Japan's stock market bubble was caused by a lack of regulation on cross-shareholding, which made them all very vulnerable to every company falling at the same time. Are companies in Japan like the United States? Japan has a unique corporate structure with these huge groups of companies called keiretsu. In a keiretsu, each company holds the stock of all the other companies in the group. How could this possibly cause a bubble? I'm Japan's best stockbroker, but in Japan, doesn't every company own every other company? Why do you think my tips are always right? Then a single bank lends to all the members of the keiretsu, as well as is the biggest equity shareholder, which is a direct conflict of interest, because as an equity holder they want the least debt, and as a bank they want the most. It's kind of like if your crack cocaine dealer also was your personal trainer. All this cocaine is using up my money. I can't afford groceries. As your personal trainer, I told you you'd lose weight. It's a monopoly. Too much market share for too few powerful people. A monopoly? Oh, like the government? These keiretsu only got so big because they enjoyed government support. I'm objecting to the cronyism behind them. The top 1% rich control these 5 banks, and then they control the entire country. We are the Borg. Resistance is futile. Actually, my keiretsu just did a leveraged buyout of your company. We assimilated you. Let's end the episode here. You can find what books the knowledge for this episode came from in the video's description. Can you both summarize your views? To summarize, the bubble in Japan was caused by easy central bank credit, as well as the Plaza Accord interventions, which artificially boosted the value of the yen. The central bank, rather than let the economy recover, lowered interest rates even more into negative territory, which only served to prolong the depression. The best solution is for the government to just do nothing, and the economy will recover on its own. To summarize, I agree with the Republican that during Japan's bubble years there was way too much easy credit. But I disagree that the government should do nothing. Instead, I think they should take advantage of the negative interest rates to do fiscal stimulus. The reason fiscal stimulus hasn't worked in the past is because Japan's political climate is so corrupt that the money has been misused. Instead, they need reform. Imbecile, did your mom fail to teach you basic math? What's going to happen to the government debt once interest rates start to rise? The interest rates have not risen in 30 years, and really, are your mom a joke? Your mom's the one that's gross. My mom? You know how ugly your mom is? She's a negative rate.